In my last video, I revisited the 2024 NBA offseason and regraded every major trade that went down that summer 1 year later. It was an incredibly eventful offseason filled with league-altering changes and surprises, but those changes didn't just come by way of trade. Free agency also brought about quite a bit of excitement last summer, so in today's video, we're once again taking a look back, only this time we're going through every single major free agency signing from the period, and we're once again regrading these moves 1 year later based on what we know now about how they worked out in hindsight. I also want to make it clear that I'm only including the free agency signings where the players switched teams, so no contract extensions will be discussed today, and I'm also including sign and trade deals because the players were still free agents at the end of the day. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first free agency signing that we'll be revisiting is Paul George signing with the Philadelphia 76ers for 4 years and $211 million, and unfortunately, the grade here is an F. The 76ers specifically planned things out for the 2024 offseason to be a time where they had max cap space available to take a big swing. Time has been ticking on this group to go all in on making a run at a title, and they knew that. So with Paul George, at least on paper, being the best player available, they threw all of the money that they had at him to reel him in, and at a time, a trio of him, Joel Embiid, and Tyrese Maxey looked pretty dangerous. Unfortunately though, reality had different plans for this group. Paul George just had what was easily the worst year he's had as an NBA player since his rookie season, when he was coming off the bench in Indiana. He noticeably looks a step slower, he only managed to average 16 points on mediocre shooting splits, he couldn't defend like he once could, and his decision making in crunch time was worse than it's ever been. Throw in the fact that he was constantly in and out of the lineup due to knee injuries, and the Sixers may have just been sold a lemon. This, on top of many other things, contributed to the Sixers having a lost season, as they missed the playoffs and resorted to tanking the last month of the year to keep their draft pick. He is now looking like one of the worst contracts in the entire NBA, still owed $161 million over the next 3 years, and he's also 35 years old, so now was always going to be the time where his game slowed down anyway. If the Sixers want to move off of his contract, they're probably going to have to attach another asset to it to convince another team to take him, but for now, their only hope is that he can rehab this summer and come back healthier next year. The next big free agency signing that we'll be revisiting is DeMar DeRozan signing with the Sacramento Kings for 3 years and $74 million, and the grade here is a C. This one was a sign and trade deal where the Kings had to offload Harrison Barnes in order to bring DeRozan in, but even at the time, this felt like a signing that would keep the team moving laterally at best, and a year later, it proved that his presence didn't really elevate them in any kind of significant way. The Kings finished in 9th place in the Western Conference in 2024, and then with DeRozan in 2025, they once again finished in 9th place in the Western Conference, only this year they won fewer games. DeRozan is still a more than capable shot creator who averaged a respectable 22 points per game this season in Sacramento, but that's just not what the Kings needed. They already had more than enough creation in the lineup with De'Aaron Fox, at least at the time, Domantas Sabonis, and Malik Monk checking that box. What they needed was more capable defenders, more active off-ball players that space the floor, and more guys that can do the dirty work. DeRozan's been criticized throughout his career for his scoring numbers feeling a bit empty, and this year it's hard to disagree with that notion, so they honestly could have spent this money elsewhere and been better off. The next free agent signing we'll be regrading 1 year later is Klay Thompson going to the Dallas Mavericks for 3 years and $50 million, and the grade 1 year later is a C+. Klay broke the band up last summer when he left the Golden State Warriors to team up with Luka Doncic in hopes of rejuvenating the final phase of his career next to an elite playmaker, but he did at least do so by way of a sign and trade, so the Warriors got something back in return. That partnership never really got to build much chemistry though, because Doncic struggled a bit with injuries in the first half of the season, and then at the trade deadline, he was shipped out in a move that shocked the entire basketball world. It was definitely tough for for Klay too, because he's been vocal about how teaming up with Luka Doncic was pretty much the entire reason he chose to go to Dallas. At this point in his career, Klay is still an above-average three-point shooter, hitting 39% of his threes this season, but he's incredibly inefficient when he shoots inside the arc. His shot selection looks a lot more suspect when he's not the flamethrower that he used to be, and he's also no longer a very good defender like he used to be. The contract he signed is still relatively team-friendly, so it's not the worst move in the world, but after he just had the second worst season of his career in Dallas, it's not as flashy as it originally seemed either. The next big signing that we'll be regrading 1 year later is Isaiah Hartenstein signing with the Oklahoma City Thunder for 3 years and $87 million, and the grade here is an A-. This was another move that raised a lot of eyebrows at the time because, to be honest, it was a bit of an overpay for a player in Hartenstein who had less than a year's worth of experience as a starting NBA center. His work crashing the glass, his mobility and length on defense, and his soft touch in the paint around the basket made him very ideal fit in Oklahoma City, capable of providing a stronger interior presence to handle the physical matchups that Chet Holmgren wasn't quite ready for, but at the price they paid, it was definitely risky. Well, when you make an all-in move like this with the sole intent of winning a championship and then go on to actually win that championship, there's no denying that the price that they paid was worth it. Hartenstein played a vital part in the Thunder's run to the title, averaging a double-double this season and providing another element to their front court, so I think the team is pretty content with their investment. The next big free agency signing that we'll be revisiting 1 year later is Tobias Harris signing with the Detroit Pistons for 2 years and $52 million, and the grade here is a B-. Tobias Harris was fresh off of one of the worst stints a player signed to a max contract has ever had during his time with the 76ers, so when the Pistons signed him to another pretty sizable contract, there was good reason to believe they could have spent some of the funds elsewhere. Tobias did come in and provide much-needed veteran leadership. He defends hard, albeit as an above-average defender, not necessarily a great defender, and still provided a useful source of secondary shot creation in the mid-range, which helped solidify the lineup for this young team, and ended up getting them back into the playoffs for the first time as a young core. He still doesn't shoot as many threes as a team with spacing issues would probably like from a player like him, but he was a steady presence for this young squad and did enough in his role to justify the signing. The next big free agency signing from last summer that we'll be revisiting is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope signing with the Orlando Magic for 3 years and $66 million, and the grade here is a D. This was one of the biggest flops of the entire period, with the intent of the signing being clear and obvious, but the execution going as poorly as it possibly could have. It's no secret, the Orlando Magic are a team that may have a dominant defense, but on offense, their floor spacing is abysmal, and their lack of shooters throughout the lineup is a serious issue. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is an NBA champion who earned his role in lineups on prior great teams because of his knockdown shooting ability and his work as a perimeter defender. In 3 of the last 4 seasons, KCP shot over 40% from 3, and in the 1 year that he didn't, he still made 39% of his threes. So for him to then sign with a team like the Magic that desperately needed that kind of production, and to come in and shoot just 34% from deep like he did this year, that's just a complete disaster. He scored the second fewest amount of points per game in his career this season, and he failed to help the team improve in the one area that they signed him for. This summer, they did end up including him in a trade package that landed them Desmond Bane, so at the very least, the end of his Magic tenure brought something positive, but overall, it was nearly a complete failure. And finally, the last big signing that we'll be revisiting from last summer is Russell Westbrook signing with the Denver Nuggets for 2 years on the veterans minimum, which is about $3 million per year, and the grade here is a C+. The Russell Westbrook experience is always going to be an interesting one to watch play out, and after the Nuggets had lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in free agency, it was intriguing to see that they had picked Russell Westbrook to be his replacement. The fit between Westbrook and guys like Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray was always clunky in theory, and early on those partnerships definitely had their fair share of growing pains, but there were also a lot of good moments where Russ was moving a lot off the ball, and his passing talent was actually potentially setting Jokic up for a lot more easy looks in the process. But in the playoffs, the clunky fit and the erratic nature of Russell Westbrook held the Nuggets back a bit, as Russ shot just 23% from the field over the last 4 games of their second round series against the Thunder, and in the playoffs as a whole, the Nuggets were a whopping 19.1 points worse per 100 possessions with Russ on the court, so in the end, it was a gamble that didn't really pay off. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about these free agency signings 1 year later. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.